The Monday morning rain over Ikeja had barely stopped when Daniel Okoro stepped out of the meeting hall. The deal that was supposed to keep him in Abuja till Friday had closed 2 days early. The investors were impressed. His logistics company had just secured a major contract with a telecom giant. He should have been celebrating with colleagues, but his mind drifted to his wife Lydia and their 6-year-old son Chimdi back home in Lekki Phase 1. For weeks Lydia had sounded tense on the phone, her voice distant, brittle. "I'm fine, Daniel," she'd say, forcing cheerfulness. Just tired of Chimdi's stubbornness. He'd laughed it off. Parenting was tiring. Still, something inside him whispered that not everything was fine. So, on impulse, he booked the earliest flight to Lagos. The drive from the airport was slow. Third Mainland Bridge was its usual monster. As he crossed into Victoria Island, Daniel imagined Lydia's face when she'd see him at the door. He even stopped at a bakery on Admiralty Way to pick up her favorite coconut bread and a small toy car for Chimdi. By the time his black Prado rolled into their estate gate, the sky had turned gold with sunset. Security guards saluted him. They didn't know he'd left Abuja early. He smiled, picturing his son's shout of "Daddy" echoing through the house. But as he approached the front door, a strange silence greeted him. No cartoons, no laughter, no sound of Lydia's humming. Then a sharp cry cut through the stillness. A child's scream. Daniel froze. It came again, muffled, from inside. Instinct replaced thought. He dropped the bread, flung the door open, and ran toward the sound. The cry grew louder as he neared the kitchen. Something heavy crashed, metal on tile, then the hiss of water on flesh. Jesus Christ! Daniel shouted as he burst in. What he saw froze him mid-step. Lydia stood over their son, a stainless steel kettle tilting in her shaking hand. Steam rose from Chimdi's arm as the boy screamed, clutching himself. The kettle clanged to the floor, boiling water splashing onto Lydia's bare foot. "Lydia, what are you doing?" Her eyes snapped to him, wide, wild, as if she'd just woken from a nightmare. For a moment she didn't seem to recognize him. Then the kettle slipped completely from her grasp, rolling away with a hollow clang. Daniel rushed forward, snatching Chimdi into his arms. The boy's skin was red, blistered. Lydia stumbled backward, trembling violently. I didn't mean, she broke off, shaking her head. Daniel wrapped Chimdi in a towel from the counter. "Get me keys," he shouted. Lydia didn't move. Her eyes were glazed, lost. He bolted for the car, Chimdi screaming in his arms, rain now pouring again. The guard tried to ask what happened. Daniel ignored him, slamming the Prado door and tearing out of the compound. Lydia's faint silhouette stood at the doorway, motionless in the downpour, as the SUV disappeared into the night. Daniel's heart pounded as he sped through Lekki's flooded streets, hazard lights flashing. "Hold on, Chimdi," he muttered, his voice breaking. The boy whimpered softly, his small body trembling against Daniel's chest. By the time he reached Evercare Hospital, nurses rushed him into the emergency ward. Doctors shouted instructions. Second-degree burns. Get saline, morphine. Daniel stood paralyzed, watching strangers take control of his child's body. Minutes stretched into hours. He finally sank into a chair, soaked in sweat and rain. His phone buzzed. Lydia calling. He stared at the screen but couldn't answer. Then she appeared, barefoot, soaked, eyes hollow. Security tried to stop her, but she whispered, "Here's my son." Daniel rose, fury shaking him. "Stay away from us." "Daniel, please. You don't understand." He cut her off. "I saw you. Lydia, you poured hot water on our child. What explanation could fix that?" Tears streamed down her face. "I didn't see Chimdi. I saw him. My father." Daniel blinked, confused. "What are you talking about?" Before she could answer, 2 police officers entered. "Madam Lydia Okoro," one asked. "You're under arrest for assault and child endangerment." She didn't resist. As they led her away, she turned to Daniel. "Please take care of him for me," she whispered. The words pierced deeper than the night. The next morning, Daniel still hadn't slept. Machines beeped softly beside Chimdi's bed. His son's small hand lay bandaged, motionless. Each time Daniel blinked, he saw the image again, Lydia's face twisted in terror, the steam rising. Reporters gathered outside. News had already leaked. Lecky mother scolds her son. A doctor entered. "He's stable now, Mr. Okoro. The burns will heal, but there might be scars." Relief crashed over him, followed by exhaustion. Then his phone rang, a call from Maman Ngozi, his mother in Enugu. "Daniel, what is this I'm hearing on Channels TV? Your wife poured hot water on my grandson." He sighed, voice trembling. "Mama, it's true." A storm of curses followed. "I told you she had bad spirit, a woman who keeps secret from her husband." Daniel hung up, unable to argue. Later that afternoon, a detective came to take his statement. "Sir, we understand you witnessed the act. We'll need your testimony." Daniel's throat tightened. He wasn't ready to relive it. "Just let me see my son recover first," he murmured. Through the hospital window, he saw Lydia being led into a police van outside. Despite everything, a sharp pang of sorrow hit him. Something about her emptiness didn't look like evil. It looked like pain. The next day, Daniel returned home for the first time since the incident. The house smelled of disinfectant. Cleaners had scrubbed the kitchen floor. Yet faint stains on the tiles told a story soap couldn't erase. He wandered into the bedroom. Lydia's nightgown lay on the bed. On her dressing table sat a small black diary, one he'd never noticed before. Curiosity tugged at him. He opened it. The handwriting was shaky. The voices came again. "They say I'm not safe. I see him in Chimdi's eyes, the man who hurt me." Daniel frowned. Another entry read, "I thought marriage would end the night maze, but sometimes I wake up screaming." His chest tightened. He read on, entries about night maze, shadows, the kettle, the smell of burning skin. Tears blurred his vision. Could this be what she meant, seeing her father instead of their son? His phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. "Mr. Okoro, I'm Dr. Tessie Adebayo, the police psychologist. Please, let's talk. Your wife might be sick, not cruel." Daniel sat on the floor, diary in hand, torn between fury and pity. Outside, rain began to fall again, soft and endless over Lagos. He whispered to the empty room, "Lydia, what happened to you?" Daniel sat in the dim kitchen long after midnight, the clock ticking like a hammer. Chimdi slept under sedation at Evercare, his tiny arm bandaged in white gauze. Daniel had brought home his son's clothes to wash away the blood-stained smell of antiseptic, but the sight of that diary on Lydia's dresser wouldn't leave his mind. He turned on the bedside lamp and opened it again. Each line was a storm. "Sometimes I hear boiling water. Sometimes I see his face in the mirror." Daniel doesn't understand. He thinks I'm quiet because I'm shy. I'm quiet because I'm scared. His stomach twisted. The he in the pages slowly took shape. A cruel father who beat Lydia and her mother, a man she never mentioned. Daniel remembered nights she'd wake up screaming. He'd assume it was stress from work. "It's nothing," she'd say, laughing it off. Now it all connected. The long stays into space, the sudden mood swings, the way she flinched at the sound of boiling kettles. He pressed his forehead against the diary, tears burning his eyes. "Why didn't you tell me?" Downstairs, thunder rolled over the lagoon. He looked at a wedding photo on the wall, Lydia smiling under the Lecky Bridge lights, her eyes alive. The woman in that picture felt like a stranger now. When his phone buzzed again with Dr. Tessa's number, he finally answered. "Mr. Okoro," the calm voice said, "your wife may not be criminally sane. She needs psychiatric evaluation. The court will decide if she's fit to stand trial." Daniel clenched his jaw. "You're saying she's sick?" "I'm saying she's broken, sir. And broken people can still be loved." The words sat heavy on his chest. He looked at the diary one more time, and quietly decided to hear her side before condemning her. The next morning, Daniel met Dr. Tessie at a small cafe near Falomo Bridge. She brought files, Lydia's initial police evaluation. Inside were sketches drawn by Lydia herself, a kettle, a child crying, a shadow holding a belt. She has post-traumatic stress disorder with postpartum psychosis tendencies, Dr. Tessie explained. After childbirth, untreated trauma can resurface violently. She's been living inside her childhood for years. Daniel felt sick, so she really saw someone else, not our son. Yes, in her mind, she was defending herself. Through flashbacks, Lydia's memories unfolded. An 11-year-old girl in Inugu hiding under a bed while her drunk father screamed. Her mother's cries, the boiling pot's use of punishment. When her mother died, Lydia vowed never to marry a man like him. But pain doesn't always stay buried. At 18, she moved to Lagos University, met Daniel at Unilag, fell in love with his calm voice. He became her safe place, but she never told him about her past. She thought marriage would cure memory. Daniel listened in silence, trembling. She needs help, Mr. Okoro, the psychologist said gently. If she doesn't get therapy, she'll spiral deeper. He nodded slowly. Do you think she knows what she did? Tessie sighed. Right now, she only knows she lost the two people she loves most. Daniel looked out toward the lagoon, that endless, restless water. Maybe healing was possible. But first, he had to face the rage that Lagos tabloids had already ignited. By Wednesday morning, Daniel's house turned into a circus. News vans parked outside the estate gate. Headlines screamed, Lagos mother from Hellscold's own child. Neighbors whispered when he passed. Lydia's family in Inugu went silent, not even a text. Then came his mother. Mama Ngozi arrived in a storm of rappers and outrage. You see what I said. You married a woman without foundation. Now she's showing her true color. Daniel tried to explain about trauma and mental illness, but Mama wouldn't listen. Abeg, mental wetting? That woman needs deliverance, not doctor. He turned away, defeated. Meanwhile, Lydia sat in a police cell in a lagbin, silent. God said she barely ate. The female officer in charge phoned Daniel. Olga, your wife dey cry every night. She say she WNC you. When Daniel visited, she looked fragile, face swollen from tears, voice barely a whisper. Diddy, is Chimdi alive? His healing. She closed her eyes, exhaling relief. I didn't mean to hurt him, Daniel. I swear on my life. He wanted to yell, to accuse, but words failed. He only asked, Why, Lydia? Why didn't you tell me about your father? She looked up slowly. Because I thought love was enough to erase pain. Daniel's heart cracked again. Outside the cell, reporters snapped photos. Inside, two souls sat between fury and forgiveness. The police transferred Lydia's case to the Igbosa court. A public defender requested a mental health assessment before trial. Dr. Tessie testified that Lydia's psychosis episodes were triggered by stress and lack of treatment. Daniel attended every session. Each time he saw her behind that glass wall, his chest ached. She looked like a ghost in human skin. At home, he reread the diary daily, trying to understand. The lines blurred between blame and compassion. One evening, Tessie called again. Mr. Okoro, Lydia is willing to begin trauma therapy, but it will require your consent for supervised sessions. She responds better when she hears your voice. He hesitated. You think she can ever be normal again? With help, yes, but she needs closure from you. The next week, he attended her first therapy session at Yaba Psychiatric Center. Dr. Tessie guided the conversation. Lydia spoke haltingly of her father's abuse, the belt, the boiling water, the night she'd hide with her little brother. When Chimdi spilled water on the floor, I heard my father shouting again. I saw him. I thought, if I stop him now, maybe I'll be free. Daniel's hand shook. For the first time, he realized she wasn't evil. She was haunted. When the session ended, Tessie turned to him. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means refusing to let trauma win. He walked out into the Lagos dusk, headlights painting the wet road. In the distance, thunder rolled again, a different kind this time, softer, like promise. In the holding war that night, Lydia dreamt she was 11 again. Her father's belt lashed across the room. Boiling water hissed. She screamed, Please, Papa, I'll be good, and woke drenched in sweat. The nurse rushed in. Madam, calm down. It's night, not home. But in her mind, home had always been war. Over the next weeks, therapy peeled her memories open like wounds. She remembered how her father would force her to kneel on salt. She remembered hiding bruises from teachers. She remembered the day her mother collapsed and died after another beating, and how her father said, "If you cry, I'll boil your hand next." Those words became an echo that followed her into womanhood. Meanwhile, Daniel faced his own storm. Social media called him the husband of a monster. Business partners avoided his calls. But a small voice inside kept saying, "If I leave her now, the cycle wins." One evening he visited again. Lydia was drawing quietly, a picture of a small boy holding his mother's hand beside a bright yellow sun. "Is that Chimdy?" he asked softly. She nodded, eyes wet. "I still see him when I close my eyes. I see him forgiving me." Daniel swallowed hard. "He already has. Lydia, he keeps asking when you'll come home." For the first time in months, she smiled faintly. "Tell him soon." Outside, the night over Lagos shimmered with distant traffic lights. Inside, two hearts, one shattered, began to remember what hope felt like. The first time Daniel walked into the visitation room at Yaba's psychiatric center, the air felt heavier than rain. Lydia sat on a metal chair, eyes hollow but calmer than before. God stood nearby, silent. When she saw him, her lips trembled. "You came." Daniel hesitated. "The doctor said it would help." "I thought you'd never want to see me again," she whispered. He took a slow breath. "I didn't. Not after what I saw. But then I read your diary." She looked down. "You found it." "Yes. You've been living with that pain for years. Lydia, why didn't you tell me?" Her hand shook, "Because no one ever believed me before. Even when I tried to tell my aunt, she said, 'Forget it. You're fine now.' So I buried it. But it buried me too." Daniel's eyes softened. "You almost lost yourself. You almost lost us." Tears streamed down her face. "Daniel, when I saw that kettle in Chimdy's hand that day, something inside snapped. I swear, I thought it was my father. I saw his shadow instead of my son's eyes. I screamed before I knew what I was doing." Daniel looked away, jaw tight. "You hurt our child, Lydia." "I know." She clasped her hands. "And I'll never forgive myself. But if you can't forgive me either, I understand." The silence between them was thick enough to choke. Then Daniel finally said, "Forgiveness isn't a switch. It's a journey." He stood to leave. Lydia reached out weakly. "Thank you for coming." As he walked away, he caught her reflection in the glass, a broken woman trying to stitch herself back together. And for the first time, he didn't just see his wife's sin, he saw her sickness. By late August, Lydia's case went public. The courtroom was packed, journalists, neighbors, activists. The air buzzed with judgment. Case of state versus Lydia Okoro, charged with grievous bodily harm and child endangerment. Daniel sat beside Dr. Tessie and Barrister Tunde Verlaine, the human rights lawyer who volunteered to defend Lydia. The prosecutor, a stern woman, opened sharply. "This is not a mental illness. This is cruelty disguised as confusion." The gallery murmured. Cameras clicked. When Lydia entered, dressed in plain gray, the room fell silent. She looked fragile but composed. Barrister Tunde stood. "My client suffers from a severe psychological disorder triggered by past trauma. We have medical proof, expert testimony, and a husband willing to speak the truth." Daniel's stomach turned. He'd agreed to testify, but every word felt like stepping on glass. When called to the stand, he clasped his hands tightly. "Mr. Okoro," the prosecutor asked, "did you personally witness your wife pour hot water on your child?" "Yes." "Did she do it intentionally?" He paused. Lydia's head bowed in shame. The courtroom held its breath. Finally, Daniel said, "I don't believe she knew what she was doing." Gasps rippled through the crowd. The prosecutor sneered. "So you're saying this was some kind of trance?" Daniel's voice cracked. "I'm saying this was a pain speaking through her. And pain can make monsters of the innocent." Reporters scribbled furiously. When the session ended, Lydia turned to him, eyes full of tears. The bailiffs led her away, but that one look said more than words ever could. Outside, Lagos traffic roared, but Daniel felt an odd stillness. He had finally chosen, not between justice and mercy, but between hate and healing. Weeks later, the court approved a recorded testimony from Chimdi. The doctors said confronting the trauma directly might harm him, so they used a child psychologist session as evidence. The video played in court. Chimdi sat holding a teddy bear, voice small but clear. "Chimdi, do you remember what happened that day?" the therapist asked. "Yes. Mummy was crying. She said, 'Leave me alone.' I tried to hug her, but she screamed. Did Mummy hurt you on purpose?" He frowned. "No. Mummy was scared. I saw her shaking. She said, 'Don't touch me.' Then she started crying again." The courtroom went silent. Daniel covered his face, trying not to sob. Lydia trembled uncontrollably. Then the boy added softly, "Please don't be angry with her. She loves me. She didn't mean to do it." Even the prosecutor lowered her gaze. When the session ended, the judge cleared his throat. "This child's compassion is remarkable." Lydia's mother, who had flown in from Enugu, wept openly. She had disowned her daughter after the scandal, but now she whispered, "I failed her. I never helped her heal." That day, the tone of the trial changed. The public began to see Lydia not as a monster, but as a broken mother seeking redemption. Social media posts trended. #justice and healing. #not all monsters are evil. #Lydia Okoro story. And through it all, Daniel remained quiet, silently praying the system would see what his son already had, that love could outlive madness. Though public sympathy began to rise, the Okoro family was falling apart. At home, Mama Ngozi packed her bags. "Daniel, I cannot live in this house again. Every corner reminds me of that wicked act. You and that woman, you both need deliverance." "Mama, she's not wicked. She's sick," Daniel said calmly. "Sick people go to hospitals, not courts. You're shaming our family." His younger sister, Adiz, stepped in. "Mama, stop. You always preach forgiveness at church, but now you can't practice it. Forgiveness doesn't mean stupidity." Mama barked. Adiz glared at her mother. "Do you remember when Daniel's accident almost killed him? Lydia was the one who donated blood and stayed up for nights at the hospital. She saved his life." That silenced Mama for a moment. Daniel sighed. "I'm not excusing what happened, but I can't abandon her while she's trying to heal." Mama shook her head, grabbing her bag. "Then you choose her over your mother." "I'm choosing what's right." She left the house that night. Outside, thunder rolled again over Lekki. Inside, Daniel sat with Adiz, silent. She finally said, "You're doing the hard thing. That's what love really is." The next morning, he got a call. "Mr. Okoro, the judge wants you present tomorrow. There's been new evidence." His heart raced. "What evidence?" "Security footage from your compound," the officer said. "It changes everything." The next day, Daniel sat in court as the prosecutor presented a USB drive. "This footage was retrieved from the defendant's home security system," she said. The judge nodded. "Play it." The screen flickered. Their kitchen appeared. Lydia stood alone, pacing, muttering to herself. Then she screamed, clutching her head. "Stop! Leave me alone!" Moments later, Chimdi walked in holding a small kettle. He said something inaudible. Lydia shrieked, stumbling back. "Don't touch me, Papa!" She grabbed the kettle from him, and in the confusion, the water spilled. The courtroom gasped. The clip continued, Lydia falling to her knees, crying, "What have I done?" When it ended, silence flooded the room. The prosecutor turned pale. "Your Honor, the defendant's actions were clearly unintentional." The judge sighed deeply. "This is no longer a criminal case. This is a tragedy." Lydia broke down, sobbing. Daniel rushed forward, ignoring protocol. The bailiffs didn't stop him. He knelt beside her, holding her hands. "Lydia, look, everyone sees the truth now. You weren't crazy. You were hurting." 2 weeks after the verdict, Lydia's case became a media phenomenon. While some still called her the mad woman of Lekki, others began to speak differently. At the center of that change was Barrister Tunde Afolayan. He was a young human rights lawyer with a quiet fire in his voice. Every time he appeared on Arise TV or Channel's news, he spoke not of scandal but of society. "We keep punishing the wounded," he said. "But trauma is an illness, not witchcraft. Lydia's case shows what silence and stigma can do in our homes." Clips of his interview went viral across Nigeria. Mental health NGOs reached out. Churches began hosting seminars titled "When the Mind Breaks." Daniel watched one of those interviews on his phone, sitting beside Chimdi on the hospital balcony. The boy's arms were healing, faint pink scars glistening in the sun. "Daddy, is Mummy still in trouble?" Daniel smiled faintly. "Not anymore, my son. She's getting better." A message buzzed on his phone from Barrister Tunde. "We're launching a campaign for mental health awareness. Voices unbroken." Lydia's story could save lives. Would you both be willing to share it publicly? Daniel hesitated. Going public meant reopening wounds. But maybe that was the point. That weekend, he visited Lydia at Yaba Psychiatric Center. She was in group therapy, reading aloud a letter she'd written. "Dear Chimdi, the day I hurt you was the day I realized my past still owned me. But I'm fighting now. Baby, I'm fighting to come back to you." When she looked up and saw Daniel, she smiled through tears. "I heard about Barrister Tunde's project," she said softly. "If my story can help just one woman break her silence, I'll tell it all." Daniel nodded. "Then let's do it together." And for the first time in months, hope didn't feel like a lie. Healing didn't happen overnight. For months, Lydia lived at the rehabilitation center under supervised care. The sterile white walls that once terrified her now became symbols of safety. She learned to draw again, to write again, and to speak without trembling. Each week, Daniel and Chimdi visited. The first few visits were awkward. Chimdi clung to Daniel's leg, unsure whether to hug his mother. But Lydia never pushed him. She'd smile, hold out her hand, and say softly, "When you're ready." One Saturday, he finally walked to her and placed a tiny paper airplane in her palm. "I made it for you," he said shyly. She burst into tears. Daniel's eyes welled up too. "He forgave you long before any of us did," he whispered. That night, she wrote a journal entry. Forgiveness doesn't erase the past. It gives it somewhere gentle to rest. In her therapy sessions, she began mentoring other women, those who'd survived abuse, rape, and abandonment. She told them her story, how she'd hidden her pain behind silence until silence nearly killed her son. Dr. Tessie watched her progress proudly. "You're stronger than you know, Lydia," she said during a final evaluation. "It's time to go home." When Daniel came to pick her up, the center staff lined the hallway, clapping softly. Lydia stepped outside into the golden Lagos sun for the first time in almost a year. The city smelled of rain and redemption. As a car rolled down Ikorodu Road, Lydia watched the bustling city, the hawkers, the Danfos, the chaos, and whispered, "I used to think Lagos was a monster, but maybe it's just full of people like me, broken, trying to heal." Daniel reached across and took her hand. "Then let's heal together." The day Lydia returned home was quiet. No cameras, no crowd, just family. Daniel had repainted the walls, changed the curtains, removed the old kettle. The house felt lighter, brighter. When Lydia stepped inside, her knees buckled. "It smells the same," she murmured, "except now it doesn't scare me." Chimdi came running from his room, holding a drawing. "Mummy, look." On the paper, he'd drawn 3 stick figures under the sun. One of them had long hair. Above it, he wrote, "Family." Lydia dropped to her knees, hugging him. "I miss you, my baby." He whispered, "I miss you too, Mummy." Tears soaked her cheeks. Daniel watched silently from the doorway, unable to speak. Later that evening, they sat in the living room, eating jollof rice together. The laughter that filled the house felt fragile but real. When Chimdi went to bed, Lydia walked into the kitchen, the same kitchen where the nightmare began. She stood still for a long time. Daniel joined her quietly. "You okay?" She nodded slowly. "Yes. For the first time, I think I am." She turned on the tap, poured water into the kettle, and placed it on the counter. Then she reached for Daniel's hand. Let's boil water, together this time. They stood there watching as steam rose gently, harmlessly, like smoke from a fire that had finally burned out. Outside, the rain began again, soft, forgiving rain over Lecky's rooftops. A year later, the world would know Lydia's story again, but this time it was told right. The documentary was titled The Day I Poured the Water. Produced by Barrister Tunde's Foundation and broadcast across Africa, it featured interviews with Daniel, Lydia, Dr. Tessie, and even little Chimdi. Clips showed Lydia walking through the psychiatric center garden, talking to women about trauma. Her voice, calm and steady, filled the screen. I'm not proud of what happened, but I've learned that silence kills faster than madness. I want people to know that healing begins when you stop hiding. The internet erupted with support. Celebrities shared the video. Churches invited Lydia to speak. Even Mama Ngozi, watching from Enugu, called her son in tears. Daniel, tell her I'm sorry. I judged her too soon. The Foundation's campaign, #Voices Unbroken, became a movement. Hospitals across Nigeria reported more women seeking help for postpartum depression and trauma counseling. At the premiere held at Terraculture, the audience gave Lydia a standing ovation. During the Q&A session, a young woman in the crowd stood up, crying, I saw my father beat my mother all my life. I thought I'd never be normal. But seeing you, Ma, I know I can heal. Lydia stepped off the stage and hugged her tightly. You're not alone. That night, Daniel watched us surrounded by journalists and advocates, pride swelling in his chest. The woman who once couldn't face a mirror was now teaching the world how to face its pain. As cameras flashed, Lydia looked at Daniel and whispered, We made it out of the fire. And he replied, smiling, No, Lydia, you turned the fire into light. 3 years later, the Okoro family's home no longer echoed with whispers, only laughter. Chimdi, now 9, chased a puppy around the compound while Daniel watched from the porch, sipping coffee. Lydia sat beside him, reviewing file from her new foundation, the Safe Haven Initiative, an NGO offering free trauma therapy for women across Nigeria. Every morning, letters poured in. Some were from mothers, others from daughters. All shared stories of pain, courage, and survival. Lydia kept each one in a wooden box labeled proof that I didn't break for nothing. Daniel had also written a book titled The Day Love Faced Madness. It told their story through his eyes, not as tragedy, but testimony. The book became a bestseller across Africa. They were invited to conferences, schools, and TV shows, but fame never mattered to them. What mattered was that lives were changing. One evening, they hosted a family dinner. Mama Ngozi came too, humbled and soft-spoken now. She held Lydia's hands. My daughter, I wronged you deeply. Please forgive me. Lydia smiled warmly. You already are, Mama. We've all been learning. As the family ate under the soft glow of garden lights, laughter filled the air. The scars, physical and emotional, were still there, but they had become reminders, not prisons. Later that night, Lydia walked outside alone, looking up at the stars. She whispered, I was once a woman drowning in my own silence, but love pulled me out. Daniel came behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. What are you thinking about? About how pain doesn't have to be the end of the story, she replied. It can be the reason someone else survives. He smiled. Then ours is just beginning. The camera of imagination pans out. The Okoro house bathed in warm light, Lagos City shimmering in the distance. A child's laughter echoes. The story ends not with revenge or ruin, but with redemption. Fade out.